My philosophy is that it's all in your perspective. You can look at what you've done with your life at varying points and say, oh, that was so random. And look at me, I'm going between different things. I don't know what I want, etc., etc. But what I have learned and what surprised me is that everything that I choose to do, because I live the story I want to tell, I only do things that I want to be in my bio and resume, that I'm okay with people Googling and seeing, things that make me proud. I've learned that I'm actually able to piece together all of these varied experiences into a very cohesive, again, perspective of who I am and what my purpose is in the world.
Wish you could just fast forward your life to the future, just to see what's going on? Us too. And while we couldn't break the time-space continuum, we can bring you the next best thing. You're listening to When I Grow Up, a podcast that matches Hopkins students with the people they dream of being in the future. Tune in to access intimate conversations with CEOs, entrepreneurs, artists, and hear answers to the questions we all wrestle with. Here's our student host for today's episode.
Hi, my name is Lara. I'm from Franklin Lakes, New Jersey, and I recently graduated from Johns Hopkins in May with a Bachelor's of Arts in Writing Seminars in English with a minor in Philosophy on the pre-law track, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Shruthi.
Hi, I'm Shruthi, and I'm coming to you from California, and I am a Disney writer and a UN TV correspondent. And at Hopkins, I studied international relations with a concentration in media and entrepreneurship and theater.
Well, Shruthi, first I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I'm just really excited to be able to talk to you because I'm also very interested in the entertainment writing space as well. Also, I just got Disney Plus, and I know your show is on there, so I'm excited to start watching it.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I'm so thrilled to talk to you. It's exciting for me as well.
Oh, thank you. I guess I could start with the first question that I wanted to ask you. To go back to when you were at Hopkins, how did you, and you said you did 10 different internships. I did not do 10. I kind of worked at the same place for a long time. So I guess since you tried out so many different things, how did you sort of forge your path from international studies to creative writing? Because you tried so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was always like that. I love to wear hats, and I say I'm the girl who wears lots of different hats. So even as early as when I was 15, I was always trying to intern at different places. I worked at my local newspaper in my town in Virginia, and I worked at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., which was super, super cool. And I also volunteered for the Red Cross. So even in high school, as so many Hopkins students are so talented coming in, I was already traveling around the country, giving talks to kids in middle school and younger. So coming into Hopkins, that was just a natural progression for me to try all of these different internships. And I think internships are so exciting because you get to see what you like and don't like and where you'd like to work. And the trick I always say too is that in an internship, you get to kind of go and explore and get lost in the company. I worked at places like the Baltimore Sun and National Geographic Travelers. So I got to just go and get lost in those buildings without having to, be under the guise of, oh my gosh, you've got to answer phones and make minimum wage. So it was a huge part of my learning experience at Hopkins to be able to have those outside experiences because Washington, D.C. was at our doorstep and Baltimore as well.
That's so cool. I wanted to transition into just the process of you getting into the writing sphere a little bit more, because I know that's something. So as a writing sims major, a lot of us are just finding out about this new screenwriting track that Hopkins is starting, or at least us who just graduated last year. And I think a lot of people would be really interested to know, how did you, you wrote your scripts, how did you get the agent, how did you get into that process and then land the job with Mira and whatnot?
Oh yeah, and it continues. It's so interesting because it is so individualistic. And for someone like me that's basically been doing my own thing since I was 15, I know how to kind of thrive in that environment. But it is very difficult, and that's why community is so key. Having those mutual motivators to be able to bounce ideas off of, to be able to say, oh, I got this job or I didn't. Like, let's build each other up, because it is a very, very strange and fascinating industry. And you really have to have the confidence in your own perspective and identity and keep creating to feel good about yourself. My own path about how I was able to make it is very interesting, because what I did is, working in New York at the UN and craving and dreaming about Hollywood, I wrote my TV pilot Lost in Transmission about those experiences. But I also was the sci-fi girl who loved time travel and always asked, why not? Instead of saying, oh, why is this possible? Asking why not. And that led me to writing a time travel movie about well, it's fascinating. It's about a girl who's, meeting her different selves, and she goes on an adventure with them. And, that really was my first project, to be quite frank. And I took it to a mentor that was so kind enough to take a chance on me. And, I was able to build. I created a deck, and I was able to sell it to Nickelodeon. And I actually had Nickelodeon and Disney both interested. And that was a dream come true for me. So that was really my first foray. And the irony is that I was still living in New York. And that's something that I would not advise. I would advise people to move to the city, move to Los Angeles if you want to do screenwriting. That's very important because there are thousands of people here that are working so hard every day. And you really want to be in that environment, that atmosphere. LA is such an amazing place for going to screenings and events, meeting people. And to be honest, my TV reporting skills helped me so much because I have no fear and going up to people and talking to them, or continuing to pursue, after many rejections, and just keep at it. So one of the things I say is that it's not about win. It's not about the win. It's about the win, which is wanting it more. So my own path was always about wanting it more. Okay, I got the Nickelodeon deal. Okay, now what do I do? Oh, many, many rejections. Okay, keep wanting it more. Go back. Keep hitting up people, et cetera, et cetera. Keep honing your scripts. And basically that's kind of how I got to where I am, and I'm still striving every single day.
So I guess just like a little bit of background about me. I know Tessa mentioned this briefly, but I came to Hopkins in 2017, and I didn't have internships during the school year, but every summer I worked as like an editorial intern for Malala Fund, then I worked as an editorial intern again, then I worked as a communications fellow. So for me, I really liked the organization when I started, so I just kind of kept coming back to them. I didn't, try out a bunch of different things. For someone who maybe hasn't tested out a bunch of different things, I guess that this is kind of like segueing into like after college. How did you try on more different hats, I guess, after college?
After college? Well, the beautiful thing about, going to school is that even though you have all your classes, you have so much flexibility. So I did the craziest things. I did an internship that started in Washington, D.C. at a TV station at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
So I really utilized like the freedom of the college experience, not having a set schedule. And even when I was at the Baltimore Sun, I got to go all around Baltimore to some of the very, very crazy places, and interviewing people like a man who bought like an 11-bedroom old Victorian home and converted it into a bed and breakfast. So honestly, for me, having all these varied experiences in my internships at Hopkins and in high school, that's what made me want to pursue TV reporting, because I realized that that's a job that literally every day is a new adventure. just like I was doing for free in college. Every day was something different, and I loved that freedom of exploring the world. National Geographic Traveler especially made me curious, and the Smithsonian, about other cultures. So a lot of students wonder what will be their first job out of college. And I know at Hopkins, there's certain tracks that are really great to recruit from. And I'll tell you one thing, I was recruited by the CIA from Hopkins. Ooh. So that was definitely, at a Hopkins job fair, because I could speak other languages. So that was definitely very intriguing. I had an offer from National Geographic Traveler, which was, again, somewhere, something that would allow me to see the world. But I got a really crazy offer. I got like 5 job offers in a week. And so they say when it rains, it pours. I had such crazy opportunities. I had one to work for the Washington Nationals and cover 300 of their baseball games. And then I answered this really sketchy Craigslist ad. And then ended up being flagged. And it was to be the face of Middle Eastern news in the U.S. To be a TV correspondent, a foreign correspondent, just like I went up to Peter Jennings in my ABC internship and was like, Mr. Jennings, I want to be a foreign correspondent like you. But I just never thought I could do it at 22, right out of college, for my first job. And I was looking for months and months. So I'm glad I waited, because I got on the bus for 5 hours, went to New York City, came back the same day. And literally my boyfriend at the time, he hid behind the bushes in the lobby of this hotel where I was having this kind of very, very unique meeting, and I got the job. So I got the job to be a foreign correspondent within the U.S., to work at the UN and the White House. And I really I really kind of think of all the experiences I had at Hopkins every day was leading me up to being brave enough to go and do something that's not traditional.
That's so cool. I'm so glad to hear that you've taken advantage of your Hopkins education in that sort of way. That's something I know as a recent college grad, I kind of wish I had done that a little bit more.
Oh, but you're just getting started. Don't worry. I always tell people right out of college, honestly, because I was doing something so non-traditional and still am, it's very much about forging your own path. So I did minor in entrepreneurship at Hopkins. And I think that was super helpful to me because everything that I do, even today, is very much creating on my own, pushing myself. And my philosophy is live the story you want to tell. So whatever you have done in your life, especially where you go to school, it's up to you how you want to shape that journey and make that your own unique perspective. So for me, how I view my Hopkins experience has changed over the years. And I have been able to appreciate it more as I figure out what my purpose is, what my 1 in a billion perspective is, my purpose plus passion. And then I take things that I learned at Hopkins and tie it back in that I didn't even know would kind of matter, even the fact is that Hopkins was the kind of school that allowed me to feel like I was making a difference from day one on campus because I was proactive. Another P word. I think that's important to be proactive. So before I got on campus, I was so excited. I joined the school newspaper, the JHU newsletter, as a writer. And I had a front page byline on the first day of school. I was like, did you see my article? I was that girl. Yeah, it was really funny. So nice. I was already immersed in the community, which was so welcoming because I was writing for the newspaper. I already got to be on the board of the Red Cross at Hopkins because I was doing it in high school, and I reached out and they were so kind. And I even had a job. I got a job before I went to school. I had a job as a random job as digital editing, which was terrible at, but paid really good back then. It was $13 an hour. I was like, hey, I'm making money paying for my education here. So
the rates have not changed that much, by the way.
Oh no.
They're kind of the same. It's $2 more.
Oh my gosh. Back then I was like, I'm gold here.
Just balling out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool to hear about. So I guess my next question would be, where has your career path surprised you? You've done so many great things, as I know I've said before, but I would want to know, like, out of all these experiences, what has surprised you the most?
What has surprised me the most? That's a very interesting question. You know what I think is really surprising is that, again, when we come back to the idea, my philosophy is that it's all in your perspective. You can look at what you've done with your life at varying points and say, oh, that was so random. And look at me, I'm going between different things. I don't know what I want, etc., etc. But what I have learned and what surprised me is that everything that I choose to do, because I live the story I want to tell, I only do things that I want to be in my bio and resume, that I'm okay with people Googling and seeing things that make me proud. I've learned that I'm actually able to piece together all of these varied experiences into a very like cohesive, again, perspective of who I am and what my purpose is in the world. And that is the most surprising, exciting thing. So I don't take it from the perspective of, oh my gosh, I didn't know what I wanted to do out of college. I tried a bunch of things and some failed. I don't see it like that at all. I see it as every day I got to live a new adventure. All of the things that I wanted to explore in high school and college led me to be a TV reporter where every day I was covering something different. I really think all of that honestly led me to TV writing because the things I saw enjoying myself on adventures were so mind-boggling and funny. It was like, they say truth is stranger than fiction. So actually all of my UN experiences as a TV reporter and things that people would say to me, I had to write it down. And I started to write it down and I thought, what medium? Like, this is just so funny. So I decided to write it as a TV show, as a script. And, that was one of the scripts that got me an agent and got me so many different opportunities. And that actually kind of made me see the universality of everybody in different cultures. When you sit on a dark Thursday night and you're writing something that comes deep from within your soul, and then you see it displayed in another like theater on a dark Thursday night, someone else is watching your words and they're like, oh my gosh, I should be kinder to my friend or my neighbor or my mom, or, and they have a realization. It's that kind of levels of art that are brought about with writing that I love. I have this philosophy that there's 3 types of art. Level 1 is it's a pretty picture. You look at it, you like it, you move on. Level 2 is that this type of art that you create actually really lodges something in someone else, and it's a mirror into their own soul, and it gives them some perspective and something that they can connect with and take into their daily life. And the 3rd level of art is when you kind of reach mass appeal, where you're really able to make an impact, a societal impact within a community or a moment in time in history. And I think that a lot of artists, we strive for level 3 because that's where the fame and the glory, and that's what we're kind of taught even from a young age to chase. But what I've learned and what surprised me is that truly the most impactful is level 2. When you are able to write something and someone else is able to read it and see a piece of their soul inside you. And I've written a lot of poems about this. I have like thousands of poems that I've written. And that is one of the big themes of it. That writing is not lonely. It's actually talking to the whole world at the same time. And we're all saying the same thing.
That's really so cool. Everything you said is so impactful. It's something that I've been thinking of a long time as like a writer at Hopkins, just that stories aren't really just only to entertain people, but they can also be really powerful in that sense. I wanted to ask you actually, so just about, I guess international studies is like kind of human at Hopkins now, we kind of consider it like social sciences, but it's like closer to the humanities than STEM is. As like a student who studied the social sciences at Hopkins, how did you move from something such as TV reporting, which is a pretty different discipline than like screenwriting/creative writing. You're telling stories in a very different way. How did you move from that level of that discipline to the next one? And then also, why did you choose to?
Yeah, that's very interesting because it definitely is a very different way of telling a story. The biggest thing for me is that TV reporting was very much about the real world. And so there was a lot of facts and statistics. And what I noticed, and this is in any discipline too, which is really beautiful when we get into the nuances and the nitty gritty. I always tell writers that the biggest thing you can do to help your script is to get really specific. You know, you don't just say a car pulled up. You say it's, a crappy Dodge Caravan. Comforting, but a little bit shady. You want to add some spice and some details so that you can put us in the picture. So with writing, I wrote for every medium. I wrote for the Baltimore Sun, the Washington Post. So I have newspaper bylines. I wrote for radio. I wrote for magazines, National Geographic, Traveler. And then for TV, it's interesting because it's something that is spoken. So you have to be very tight and concise. And what I learned with TV reporting is that I learned how to use little puns and wordplay and really making like double entendres and making your words count and really punchy and making them punchy on the page and also when they were delivered by me and by the anchors that I would work for as well. And I think that is a common thread that I could take into TV writing, because TV writing is also about writing something punchy that could be recognized on the page. So you get that job and that agent. And then also can translate to very punchy and intriguing and funny when actors and performers say it out loud. So a lot of times what I do is I'm saying my words out loud first and then I'm writing them. I'm like, oh, that's a good line. That's a good line. And I'll put it down, or vice versa. I'll write it and then I'll perform it myself, which is where the theater background and being an actress is also super, for me, it's very interdisciplinary to be on both sides, the writer and the performer, and kind of get into both heads. And I was doing that as a reporter because I was writing my own material and I was reporting, and the way I reported a lot of times when I was reporting was the material. It turned out to be quite hilarious. I have a super great blooper reel of all the times that I did just terrible things on live international television, and just had to kind of fly by the seat of my pants, learn on the job. And that's what you got to do in the world of Hollywood as well. It's a lot of it is learning by doing. So that's what I tell people, because a lot of times in TV, they're like, oh my gosh, this UN background, etc. And, again, how you tie it together, that's your unique perspective. And the talent is always in the choice. So you really got to be very, very, very specific and purposeful in your choices in life. One tip, that I tell young people, to really feel quote special and unique in yourself, is focus on your own IP, which is your identity plus your purpose, your own 1 in a billion IP. Please do. So identity plus purpose, and really your identity will fuel your purpose. And how do you figure out your identity? The first step is to go even beyond yourself, your family history. Write down the things that different people did and pick the ones that speak to you, that are part of the story you want to tell about your history and heritage. That's one way to feel proud. And then pick 3 adjectives that describe yourself 90% of the time. Whether it's the mailman or your mother or the Uber driver or, a job interview, these are 3 aspects that everyone would say about you that are very specific. Yeah, because one thing we kind of tend to do a lot is we'll say, oh, beautiful, smart, funny. But then that is actually, being a writer, that's actually not giving enough agency to words, because we're not being specific, because all of us are beautiful and funny and smart and different times, etc. What are we like mostly, specifically, what are we all the time? That's how we hone who like our voice is. You can just never know, but you got to be open. You got to be open to it.
Yes.
That's what I recommend for you, especially because you were saying, you weren't sure. Just know that it's going to be okay. Like the truth is, when you go for interviews, especially in an industry like in Hollywood, the interviews are not so rigidly academic based or professional. It's with writing, it's like, hey, can I hang out with you in a room and riff and make jokes, and are you going to be fun, interesting, and cool? And that all comes with living that person, being that person, not, my gosh, I got to do all the work and go to bed by 10. Yeah, there's a funny story, like there's a funny line that's like, oh, early to bed, early to rise, that's how you never meet the interesting guys.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's what I tell all the girls and guys. Like, that's how you meet the interesting people and the interesting experiences, really. So
that's so cool to hear about. Also, I love what you said about how the punchy dialogue and like learning to do that for like TV reporting sort of helped you. It was like the through line between you doing the TV reporting and you doing screenwriting. I think that's such a cool transition. But I did want to ask you, like, just to specify, why did you decide to move into screenwriting? Because I know how that helps, but I would want to know, like, was it the thing we talked about with the like just the power of storytelling for children, or like what drew you to screenwriting, I guess?
Yeah, so I talk to a lot of kids about this, and especially who are in high school. And the great question about in our society about going for traditional paths, where I get this degree and then I get the next one, or I know what jobs are waiting for me, versus forging your own path. And for me, it's always about freedom and adventure. So I had no choice but to forge my own path. And the reason why I gravitated back towards TV writing is because the influence it had on me as a child. I was an only child for many years. And so the TV shows that I grew up watching on Nickelodeon and Disney, those were like my safe place. That was, no matter what was going on at home or with school or with friends, that's where I could go back to and have like this dual experience of something that's so safe and comforting, but also the greatest adventure that I could go on. And it really made me live in these like other dimensions of sci-fi and romance and just seeing the universe as this place to explore. And that was something that I always loved as a kid. And there's a saying out there that you should look back to what you were doing when you were 11 years old. What you were doing when you were 11 is a really good insight into potentially what your true intrigue, interests, and purpose in life may be. And so, yeah, writing, performing, that was what I loved to do when I was 11. And TV reporting, ironically enough, was kind of a more acceptable path, to be quite frank. Knowing that I could succeed writing for front page bylines, for an institution as old as the Baltimore Sun, that gave me a lot of confidence, made my parents sleep better at night. So it was really about going back home and going to something that I craved to do when I was a kid, but just didn't know how. And now the whole push in Hollywood for inclusion and diversity, it's so meaningful to me because now I see so many kids like me that are able to pursue those dreams from age 17. Like I always thought, oh my gosh, I wish I could have done theater earlier and I'm too late. And no, it's never too late. And I'm a testament of that, essentially being somebody who switched careers, but again, tying it all together so that my life experiences enhance what I'm doing now versus feeling like, those were years wasted, which I don't think anybody ever can say about anything they've ever done.
Also, Shruthi, I know you're a busy mom, so I don't want to keep you later than you need to be, but thank you so much for meeting with me again, and it was just so great to speak with you. I really learned so much.
You have been listening to When I Grow Up, brought to you by Higher Hopkins and Hopkins Connect at Johns Hopkins University. Thank you to our When I Grow Up podcast team and all the people who make this podcast possible, including our editor, Thomas Nishimoto, our host students, and all of our guests.